We're going to speak about creation, the origin of man, and the fall in sin. The Sabbath, the physical, spiritual man, and the tree. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, along with everything in them. And on the seventh day Elohim was finished with his work which he had made. So he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. Elohim blessed the seventh day and separated it as holy, because on that day Elohim rested from all his work which he had created, so that it itself could produce. Elohim rests after creating. It is the seventh day, and he leaves it to continue on its own, so that it itself could produce. So his intervention ended and creation matured, so-called out of his pocket. That means anyone who has children who are older, and where the children have left the situation where they're dependent on the physical support from their parents, they are out of the pocket. And at the same time, one leaves them so that they themselves can produce. So this is exactly what Elohim does. He rests after having created, because his creation is in a position that it can take care of itself. Here is the history of the heavens and the earth when they were created. On the day when Yudevave Elohim made heaven and earth and heaven, there was yet no wild bush on the earth, no wild plant had yet sprung up, for Yudevave Elohim had not caused it to rain on the earth, and there was no one to cultivate the ground. Rather, a mist went up from the earth, which watered the entire surface of the ground. Then Yudevave Elohim formed a person, Hebrew Adam, from the dust of the ground, which is Adamah, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, so that he became a living being. Elohim makes physical man, Adam, which means ruddy, out of the dust of the red earth. And the red earth is known as Adamah. That actually is red earth. So Adam comes from Adamah, and blood is Dam, which also is red. And he had already created man spiritually, and now he made them physically. And Elohim places man's physical form into his physical form. He blows his breath or neshama into it, and the physical form becomes a living soul, or a nefesh chai. All animals have a nefesh. This nefesh lives because chai means lives. Elohim has put his neshama, or his ruach, into man, and that makes the nefesh alive. And John 17 says, and eternal life is this, to know you, the one true Elohim, and him whom you sent, Yeshua, the Messiah. Yudevave Elohim planted a garden towards the east in Eden, and there he put the person whom he had formed. Out of the ground, Yudevave Elohim caused to grow every tree pleasing in appearance and good for food, including the tree of life in the middle of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He places the man that he formed, first spiritually and then physically, in the garden. And there also is a tree in the middle of the garden. The tree of life is in the middle of the garden. And the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is also in the middle of the garden. So the question is whether it's the same tree, and whether the difference is because these two trees actually are spiritual trees. They're metaphysical. They, by manner of speaking, are Elohim's interpretation via the Ruach, versus satanic or human interpretation, which ends up in legalism. So Elohim ordained man to cultivate and to care for the garden, not to exploit it. And he said that you may not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. By implication, one may eat of the tree of life. As Adam lives, due to the Ruach that is in him, the silent voice. The silent voice, which is the Ruach, which is Yudevave himself, gives of the tree of life to eat so that man can live. Yudevave gave the person this order: you may freely eat from every tree in the garden except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You're not to eat of it, because on the day that you eat from it, it will become certain that you will die. Again, the issue of the silent voice and the other voice. Now let's study this tree a little bit further, because the tree of life is known to be the Torah, the Tanakh. Why? Because the Torah of the Ruach, which produces this life in union with Messiah Yeshua, has set me free from the Torah of sin and death. And the question is, what is the difference between these two Torahs? The Torah of sin and death is own or satanic interpretation of the scriptures, that is legalism. Whereas the Torah of the Spirit of the Ruach is the Ruach's interpretation. It is Elohim's interpretation of the scriptures. For what the Torah could not do by itself, because it lacked the power to make the old nature cooperate, Elohim did by sending his own Son. So the Torah by itself did not have the power to make the old nature cooperate, because it was just information. It was like the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It is the perverted tree that comes when Satan interprets it for human beings instead of the Ruach HaKodesh doing so. Then Elohim did this by sending his own Son as a human being with a nature like our own, for one, but without sin. So clearly this could only be because Ruach HaKodesh fully rested on Yeshua, and therefore he sent his Son with that nature but without sin. And he did this in order to deal with sin, and in so doing, he executed the punishment against sin in human nature. So the execution of the punishment against sin actually means that in Yeshua's nature, he did not do sin. And for that reason, that was an execution of sin, so that the just requirement of the Torah might be fulfilled in us, who do not run our lives according to what our old nature wants, but according to what the Ruach wants, so that the just requirement of the Torah might be fulfilled in us, who don't do what our flesh wants, but what the Ruach wants. This means that it is the Ruach interpreting the requirements of the Torah and bringing us to fulfilling them in a contextual sense, as it is in Deuteronomy 6 in the Shema. And once more, we're at this, the Torah of sin and death, own or satanic interpretation of legalism, and the Torah of the Spirit, which is the Ruach and the Ruach's interpretation. Death occurs when one breaks trust with Elohim, when you listen to the other voice, because the other voice is Satan's interpretation. The life is Neshama, or Ruach HaKodesh, Elohim's interpretation. Elohim gave the person this order: you may freely eat from every tree in the garden, except the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You're not to eat from it, because on the day that you eat from it, it will become certain that you will die. Elohim said, it isn't good that the person should be alone. I will make for him a companion suitable for helping him. In everything we've seen so far, we've seen that continually in creation, the one phase prepares for the next phase that is to come. And obviously, here there is the existence of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. And then Yud He Vav He says it is not good that a person should be alone. So in the context of the tree, it is not good that the person should be alone. So the woman must be there to help him not to eat from the tree. I will make for him a companion suitable to him. So he makes woman in terms of the voices, and the two voices clearly are Yud He Vav He and Satan. And then in this making, when one looks at the Hebrew, the woman is to be a help against Satan. That's because of female spirituality and sensitivity. Man is in Elohim's image. Not good for man to be alone. Not good for Elohim to be alone, so he creates his bride, his wife. He creates mankind. His bride is the woman, if the Ruach is there. Then Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall upon the person, and whilst he was sleeping, he took one of his ribs and closed up the place from which he took it with flesh. The rib which Yud He Vav He Elohim had taken from the person, he made a woman person, and he brought her to the man person. Woman was made of rib. Rib is part of the breathing mechanism. So that means that woman was meant to breathe the same way that males are to breathe. The Ruach is breath. And therefore man and woman share this ability to breathe the Ruach. Interestingly, that this is where she's made from the rib, from his side. John 19:35. However, one of the soldiers stabbed his side with a spear, and at once blood and water flowed out. Blood is Yeshua's life, because the life of an animal is in the blood, and the blood has been given to atone. That is written in Leviticus 17. The water that comes along with the blood is a symbol of Ruach HaKodesh. It is a sign of the bride who has been created. So the bride is created through the blood and the water. Yeshua's life, that is to be in her, and Ruach HaKodesh, that is to help her to breathe as he breathed. Interestingly, Moses, when he asks to say, see Yud He Vav He, Yud He Vav He says, you cannot, but my face you cannot see, because a human being cannot look at me and remain alive. Here he said, is a place near me. Stand on the rock when my glory passes by. I will put you inside a crevice in the rock and cover you with my hand until I've passed by. Then I will remove my hand and you will see my back, but my face is not to be seen. So Moshe is put into the cleft in the rock. Yeshua is the rock. So the cleft in the rock is the cleft in Yeshua's side. So Moshe is actually guarded against the face of Yud He Vav He by being put into the cleft in the rock. The man person said at last, this is bone from my bones and flesh from my flesh. She is to be called woman, Hebrew Isha, because she is taken out of man, Hebrew Ish. This is why a man is to leave his father and mother and stick with his wife, and they are to be one flesh. Bone from my bones, she is also a person. Flesh of my flesh, she has the same basic nature as Adam. She can receive and can hear Ruach HaKodesh. Woman is Isha, or fire, female fire. Man is Ish, which is fire. They will burn each other when they are in the absence of the Ruach. But when the Ruach is there, they will burn together, and they will burn away their sin. They were both naked, the man and his wife, and they were not ashamed. They were naked, but they were clothed in the Shekhinah. Each was there for the other, not for money, for love, for property, for anything else. They were there for each other, not for themselves. And they were clothed in the Shekhinah. They were clothed in Elohim himself. Ephesians 5:22-26, wives should submit to their husbands as they do to the Lord, because the husband is head of the wife, just as the Messiah, as head of the Messianic community, is himself the one who keeps the body safe. Just as the Messianic community submits to the Messiah, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. As for husbands, love your wife, just as the Messiah loved the Messianic community, indeed gave himself up on its behalf, in order to set it apart for Elohim, making it clean through immersion in the mikveh, so to speak. This is popular to men, because women must submit. Just as the Messianic community submits to the Messiah, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. We like this because women should submit. But then, as for husbands, love your wives, just as the Messiah loved the Messianic community, indeed gave himself up on its behalf in order to set it apart for Elohim, making it clean through immersion in the mikveh, so to speak. So men must love their wives as Mashiach, the body. He died for her, the body, his body, the body of Messiah. And husbands are to die to sin for their wives, as Yeshua died for the body's sin, and he's to teach her to die to sin, to assume accountability. Yeshua gives the Ruach, and he gives resurrection. Genesis 3 verse 2, now the serpent was more crafty than any wild animal which Yudhaya had made. He said to the woman, did Elohim really say you are not to eat from any tree in the garden? The snake speaks. The woman's role is to submit to man. She should listen to him and to Elohim only. Now she's starting to speak to the snake, to Satan, and she activates the snare. The snare is that she knows Satan by speaking to him. The serpent says to the woman, it is not true that you will surely die, because Elohim knows that on the day you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. Satan says Elohim lies. You can interpret the tree yourself. Legalism will come about when you interpret it yourself. It will be for yourself. It will not be for Elohim. It will not be for your partner. And unwritten, Elohim himself would give of the tree out of his hand, his interpretation by Ruach HaKodesh. When she answers Satan, she intensifies her knowing of Satan. She should actually refuse to talk. She should not submit to Satan's opinion. Elohim's interpretation comes by the Ruach, gives life. Elohim gives the fruit. Satan's interpretation is legalism and death, and one takes the fruit. So men and women choose to take the fruit and eat everything for self, and that divides them one from the other. They heard the voice of Yudhaya Elohim walking in the garden at the time of the evening breeze, so the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of Yudhaya Elohim among the trees in the garden. Yudhaya walks and talks in the evening breeze. The Hebrew for the evening breeze is Ruach Yom. Ruach is spirit, wind, breeze. Yom is evening, day, era, or even continuous. So what actually can also be written here is that Yudhaya comes to walk with Adam continuously in the Ruach, and the word walk in Hebrew is halach, and that is living one's faith. So Yudhaya actually came to halach with Adam continuously in the Ruach, so that he would be able to live his faith. And Elohim called to the man, where are you? He answered, I heard your voice in the garden. I was afraid because I'm naked, and I hid myself. Elohim looks for Adam and he's naked. He was previously clothed in the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah and the Ruach withdraw, and therefore he's not naked. So Elohim knows that what had happened, because that is only possible after eating of the tree, breaking the relationship with Elohim and also breaking the relationship with Eve, because now it is about himself. And the minute one eats of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, it is about yourself and not about Elohim or others anymore. What could Adam conceivably have done to turn this around? He could have done as Moshe. He could have asked, do not kill them, kill me. And Adam could also say, attribute her mistake on me, as the second Adam did, as Yeshua did. The result would have been shalom. Yeshua brings through shalom and reverses the fall in sin. And to reverse the fall in sin is to die to sin and to accept accountability for sin, to be resolute, to change. And this resolution to change cannot be born through if Ruach HaKodesh does not bring it about in one. So that one can repair relationships and step in for Eve. He said, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I ordered you not to eat? The man replied, the woman you gave to be with me, she gave me fruit from the tree, and I ate. So having eaten and having lost the Shekhinah, immediately Adam starts blaming someone else. That is Eve. Says it is she. And immediately this is about him. It's not me. It's not about her. So no longer is she the reason that he is with her, but he is the reason. Yudhei Vavei Elohim said to the woman, what is that you have done? The woman answered, the serpent tricked me, so I ate. Eve said, it is the snake, not I. It is about her. And not, she should have said, I have eaten. Full stop, period. And she should have taken accountability for what she did. So it is the snake. Satan deceived her, so she gave to Adam. She didn't say she ate and she's accountable and she gave to Adam. The conclusion is that it was about her standing with God and not about Adam's.